Q&A1. What do you understand by judicial review? Discuss the features of judicial review in India and the issues associated it. Answer. Judicial review refers to the power of the judiciary to interpret the constitution and to declare any such law or order of the legislature and executive void, if it finds them in conflict with the Constitution of India. Under Article 13(2) of the Constitution of India, any law made by the Parliament that abridges the right conferred to the people under Part 3 of the Constitution is void ab initio. The power to interpret the Constitution of India to its full extent lies within the judiciary. Power of judicial review is vested in many articles such as 13, 32,136, 142, 147 of the Constitution. Features of judicial review in India. Judicial review power is used by both the Supreme Court and High Courts. But the final power to determine the constitutional validity of any law is in the hands of the Supreme Court of India. Judicial review of both central and state laws. Judicial review can be conducted in respect of all central and state laws, the orders and ordinances of the executives and constitutional amendments. It covers laws and not political issues. Judicial review applies only to the questions of law. It cannot be exercised in respect of political issues. Judicial review is not automatic. The Supreme Court does not use the power of judicial review on its own. It can use it only when any law or rule is specifically challenged before it, or when during the course of hearing a case the validity of any law is challenged before it. Principle of procedure established by law. Judicial review is governed by the principle of procedure established by law, as given in Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. The law has to pass the test of constitutionality. If it qualifies, it can be made a law. On the contrary, the court can declare it null and void. Clarification of provisions which a rejected law violates. While declaring a law unconstitutional, the Supreme Court has to cite the provisions of the Constitution which it violates. The court has to clearly establish the invalidity of the concerned law or any of its part. Issues associated with judicial review in India. Undemocratic. The critics describe judicial review as an undemocratic system. It empowers the court to decide the fate of the laws passed by the legislature, which represent the sovereign will of the people. Lack of clarity. The Constitution of India does not clearly describe the system of judicial review. It rests upon the basis of several articles of the Constitution. Source of administrative problems. Now a law can face judicial review only when a question of its constitutionality arises in any case being heard by the Supreme Court. Such a case can come before the Supreme Court after 5 or 10 or more years after the enforcement of that law. As such, when the court rejects it as unconstitutional, it creates administrative problems. Vaji and Ravi. The Recitals, January 2021. Page 8. Delaying system. Judicial review is a source of delay and inefficiency. The people in general and the law enforcing agencies in particular sometimes decide to go slow in respect of the implementation of a law. They prefer to wait and let the Supreme Court first decide its constitutional validity in a case that may come before it at any time. Tends to make the Parliament less responsible. Judicial review can make the Parliament irresponsible, as it can decide to depend upon the Supreme Court for determining the constitutionality, reasonableness of a law passed by it. Reversal of its own decisions by the Supreme Court. It is on record that on several occasions the Supreme Court reversed its earlier decisions. The judgment in the Golaknath case reversed the earlier judgments, and the judgment in the Keshwananda Bharti case reversed the judgment in the Golaknath case. The same enactment was held valid, then invalid, and then again valid. Such reversals reflect the element of subjectivity in the judgments. Conclusion. In India, we have adopted the concept of separation of powers, so we cannot assume the power of judicial review in full extended form. If the courts presume full and arbitrary power of judicial review, it will lead to the poor performance of work by all the organs of government. So, to keep all the functions work properly, each has to work in its provided sphere. In India, we have the concept of judicial review embedded in the basic structure of the Constitution. It helps the courts to keep a check and balance upon the other two organs of government so that they don't misuse their power and work in accordance with the Constitution. Extra mile. Central Vista Project. Recently, the Supreme Court refused to treat the Central Vista Project as a unique one requiring greater or heightened judicial review. The Central Vista Project aims to renovate and redevelop 86 acres of land in Lutyens, Delhi, in which the landmark structures of the Indian government, including Parliament House, Rashtrapati Bhavan, India Gate, North Block and South Block, etc., stand. Supreme Court's view: government may examine advantages or disadvantages of a policy at its own end. It may or may not achieve the desired objective. It is not the court's concern to inquire into the priorities of an elected government. Judicial review is never meant to venture into the mind of the government and thereby examine validity of a decision. The government is entitled to commit errors or achieve successes in policy matters without the court's interference as long as it follows constitutional principles. 2. The Ministry of Health and Family Welfare recently released the longitudinal aging study in India. LASI. What is LASI? Highlight the findings of the study. Answer. Launched in 2016, LASI is a full-scale national survey of scientific investigation of the health, economic, and social determinants and consequences of population aging in India. Vaji and Ravi. The recitals, January 2021. Page 9. LASI, Wave 1 covered 72,250 individuals aged 45 and above for the 2017-18 period. This included 31,464 people aged 60 and above and 6,749 aged 75 and above from all states and union territories, excluding Sikkim. Funded by the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, it is India's first and the world's largest ever survey that provides database for designing policies for the older population in the broad domains of social, health, and economic well-being. Similar studies have been carried out in 41 countries. In Asia, China, Korea, Japan, and Indonesia have taken up the exercise. The study was carried out by the International Institute of Population Sciences (IIPS) Mumbai in collaboration with Directorate General of Health, Harvard School of Public Health, University of Southern California, United Nations Population Fund and FPA and National Institute on Aging. Key findings: in the 2011 census, people aged 60 and above formed 8.6% of India's population, accounting for 103 million elderly people. Growing at around 3% annually, the number of elderly age population will rise to 319 million in 2050. The study shows that the prevalence of single morbidity and multi-morbidity conditions increases with age. Around 26% of older adults age 45 and above reported that they have been diagnosed with single morbidity and 18% have been diagnosed with multi-morbidities. Around a quarter, 23% of the elderly age 60 and above have multi-morbidities. Mental health issues: as per the study, 1 in 5 elderly persons in India has mental health issues. While age-associated decline in cognitive ability score is consistent across states and socio-economic spectrum, it was found to be closely related to educational attainment across all ages. For instance, 9% of people with less than primary education had depression, and it dropped sharply to 5% in people with 10 or more years of schooling. More women suffered from depression than men in the rural areas. Work-limiting health conditions: more than 40% of those aged 60 and above, who are either currently working or had worked in the past, reported having work-limiting health conditions. In the above 60 category, 11% suffered from at least one form of impairment: locomotor, mental, visual or hearing, compared with 6% in the 45 to 59 age bracket. Almost 1/4 of those over 60 face at least one limitation in pursuing daily activities such as movement in bed, changing position from sitting to standing, feeding, bathing, dressing, grooming, personal hygiene. Treatment rates: around 75% of those 60 and above who were diagnosed with chronic conditions have been treated for hypertension, 77% chronic heart diseases, 74% diabetes mellitus, 83% chronic lung diseases, 72%, and cancer, 75%. More than half the elderly have been treated for stroke, 58%, and bone or joint diseases, 56%, whereas the treatment rate for neurological and psychiatric diseases is 41%. The treatment rate for all chronic health conditions is higher among the elderly in urban areas. The recitals, January 2021. Vaji and Ravi. Page 10. Social Security benefits: about 1/5 of those 60 and above, who are officially retired, are currently receiving pension, and an additional 3% are expected to receive it. A large proportion, 78%, are neither receiving nor expected to receive pension. More than half of people aged 60 and above, 54%, with 10 or more years of schooling, and who are officially retired, are receiving pension. In comparison, just 4% of those with no schooling get pension. Social Security coverage is significantly higher in smaller states and UTs where people are mostly engaged in full-time jobs and in public sector units. North, East and Central Indian states have almost negligible Social Security coverage. The evidence from LASI will be useful in strengthening and broadening the scope of National Program for Healthcare of the Elderly, and will also help in establishing a range of preventive and healthcare programs for older population and most vulnerable among them.